Sweet Temptations. Part 2. I heard a knock on the door and I didn't know what to do, whether to go and get the door or to call Shantel's friend. But I don't even know her name, and the knock came again, and I stood up and went to the door and asked who it was, and it was Shantel, and I opened the door. As she saw me, she hugged me so passionately. She was carrying 2 polythene bags, stocked with some food items, and I helped her with one. She got inside the house and I jammed the door. She looked on the floor and saw a gown by the foot of the table, where I placed my orange juice, and she was startled, and I followed her eyes and saw the gown on the floor. I was mad at myself that I didn't notice that the gown was lying there all along. She picked it up from the floor, and that's when I realized that I have messed up. I looked away as I heard her talk to herself. "What's Annabelle's gown doing here?" And she looked at me. "Where is Annabelle?" she asked me with a suspicious look. "Who's Annabelle?" I inquired. "My friend," she said. "Oh, I didn't know that her name is Annabelle. She is Nissid," I said to her, and she collected her bag from my hand and rushed in. I guess she met the door locked because I heard some banging on the door before the door was opened, and I was expecting to hear some war or quarrels from the inside, but instead, after some couples of minutes that she got in, I began to hear some friendly chats and laughter, and I was glad that she did not get to find out about what I and her friend did behind her back. And thanked God, not too long, they both came out and met me in the parlor. Her friend sat down and couldn't boldly look at my eyes. She went in and came out with 2 apples in a plate and offered it to me, and I collected it and pasted it on the stool beside me. And Annabelle asked for her own apple, and she told her to go get her own in the kitchen, and she went in and came out with 2 apples in the plate too. Shantel sat on my laps and was touching me in my beard. "Hope my friend didn't bother you when I was away?" she asked me as she was looking at her friend Annabelle. "No, she did not bother me," I replied. "That's awesome," she said as she gave me a light kiss and collected an apple from the plate and bite off some chunks, and she put it in my mouth and I bite off mine too. "What are you watching?" she asked. "Gossips," I replied, and she said me that she didn't know that men like gossip too, expressing that she thought that men only like football and other games. And I told her that my kind of person is different, that I don't follow the crowd, that I only like gossip and music. She got on her foot and told me that she is going to prepare food in the kitchen. She walked down to the kitchen and Annabelle eyed me and followed her immediately, and I ate the remaining apple on the plate. And nature calls as I began to feel thirsty. After some time, I decided to go to the kitchen to get some water, and as I was about entering the kitchen, I overheard them discussing me, and Annabelle was telling her that I am a real man, that I was more than what she said that I am. She told her that she has to run away from me, as I wanted to choke her with my Monday hammer, and they laughed. Shantel told HR that the 2 of them are going to knack me after eating, and let them see how I am going to defeat the 2 of them. As I heard that, my heart was full of joy and I wasn't feeling tasty any longer, and I tiptoed back to the parlor seat before they will see. "So they planned all these," I said to myself, and I came to conclusions that Shantel has been telling her friends about my big and mighty hammer and my knacking horsepower abilities, and I was patiently waiting for the food to dawn, so that I will have the best moment of my life, knacking to friends at once. Not too long, they were done with the food. They dished it out, and Shantel gave me my own plate of jollof rice and chicken, and they were carrying their own plates. I tasted the food and it was so delicious. I asked who cooked the meal. Shantel pointed at Annabelle, while Annabelle pointed back at Shantel, and they were using me to catch fun. And I asked them to be serious for once, and Annabelle told me that the meal is a product of a combined effort, and I commended them after the meal. Shantel said that we will play a game in the room, and I pretended like I don't know what's going on, and I asked her, "What kind of game do we play in the room?" She smiled at me and said, "When you get in the room, you will know." And she stood up and collected my plate and that of Annabelle. "Shall we?" she said, and we all stood up and walked towards the room. I and Annabelle got into the room while she went to the kitchen to drop the plates, and she later joined us in the room. The name of the game is Truth or Dare, she announced, and she directed us, and we sat in a circle form. And she introduced how the game is being played and urged everyone to stick to the rules. And she began the game. Truth or Dare. Truth, said Annabelle. When last did you knack? She thought for a couple of seconds. Today. And they laughed, and I wasn't even moved because I know that it was all a game, and I was just patiently waiting for the part that I have to knack the two of them. You are damned lucky, I said in my mind, thinking of Annabelle's sweet capricious when I had her, but she didn't stand my energy, so he ran away. And I said to myself that I am going to take it slowly and gently this time around. And it was Annabelle's time to play against me. Truth or Dare, she said. Truth, I replied. Have you cheated on Shantel before? She asked. Haba, did you want to scatter my relationship? I played along, and Shantel was looking at me with keen interest. Answer my question, she insisted. Okay, yes I have. I answered, and it was my time to play, and I have been suspecting my girlfriend Shantel ever since. I realized that she planned with her girlfriend to flex me. I began to suspect that they might be deep into some weird things that girls of this generation do. I suspected that they might be leaking or touching their snails with cucumber or all those rubber Monday harmer. Have you leaked your fellow girl's snail before? I asked, and I noticed that the question hit her so much, and she looked at Annabelle and she nodded at her. Yes, I have, she said, and it was her time to pay against Annabelle. Truth or Dare? Dare, said Annabelle. Remove Alan's Monday harmer and play with it until it's hard as Zuma rock. Annabelle looked at me, and I didn't click. She looked at Shantel, and she gave her that mischievous smile, and she smiled too, and she reached for my cucumber and brought it out from its house, and it was sleeping, and she began to play with it. And little by little, it stood strong like Armstrong, and she wanted to leave it like that and return to the game, and I told her to finish what she has started. She looked at Shantel and she nodded at her to go ahead. Slowly, she put the pink cap of the Monday harmer in her mouth, and the leaking began. Shantel came close and subtracted her gown, and told us to do it while she watched, and I took her gently this time around to enjoy her slippery snail. And after our first round, Shantel joined us later, having subtracted her own gown, and I was going round till all of us were satisfied, and we lay in the room naked, gisting and playing with each other's tools. I checked my time, and it was 6:45 p.m. in the evening, and I had to start preparing to go home. Shantel rested her head on my chest as she was holding my Monday hammer, and she never forgot to play with the 2 eggs in my sack bag. Annabelle's head was on my lap as she was pressing her phone. We really had a rough ride to Sodom and Gomorrah, and it was the greatest feeling I've ever had. There were few women who have satisfied me in the other room. I don't know the kind of energy I have when it comes to pleasure. I stretched my hand and was playing with the nuts at the tip of Shantel's oranges, and it began to get stiff, and she turned to me and said, "Don't start to put me on fire, or you will have to quench the fire." Talking about quenching fire, I don't have the energy. I have to start going because it's getting late, I said to her. Annabelle turned and looked at me as she said, "Not tonight." Of course not tonight. Shantel supported her. But I didn't plan to stay for a night, I said. You don't have to plan to sleep at your girlfriend's house. My house is your house. You are going nowhere, Shantel said with a sad face. I looked at her and noticed that she meant what she said. She doesn't want me to go. And it's Saturday evening and tomorrow is Sunday, and wouldn't be going to work. Okay, I'm staying, I said, and Annabelle jumped up and began to dance as the tires at her backside was clapping and vibrating at the same time. I smiled and said in my mind, Alan, you have enjoyed life. Look at what you have eaten. Like seriously. I'm beginning to have feelings for Annabelle. Maybe because of her succulent body structures. Everything God puts in her body was so wow. And the most surprising thing is that I used to think that all snails were the same until I tasted her own. I don't know how I will begin to explain it, but the truth is that her snail gives me a unique taste and satisfaction compared to that of Shantel, and I'm beginning to think of having her alone in the absence of my girlfriend Shantel. And she danced and came to me and began to pick my beards as one of her fruits entered my mouth and I began to suck it. And she moaned as Shantel lowered her head on my abdomen and shuffled the cap of my cucumber in her mouth, and the sleeping monster began to rise gradually, and it became as hard as 20 mm rod. And the play began again, and I have to run my cucumber from Shantel snail to Annabelle snail, until all of us got to the peak of Mountain Everest. At the end of the play, I was so exhausted, and I observed that the two friends were filled with energy and vitality like I donated all of my strength to them, and they went and took their bath and came back and asked me to do the same, and I told them that I will do that later. They both got in their night dress and went to the living room, and I didn't know when I slept off naked on the bed. I felt someone rubbing her fingers on my chest. I could feel the soft and smooth fingers from the dream world. I opened my eyes and it was Annabelle. "You are still asleep?" she whispered so softly in my ears. "Yeah, I feel so weak," I said. "You should. You are a real man satisfying two rotten daughters of Eve," she continued, and I smiled. "Hope you enjoyed it?" I asked, and she smiled and said, "You are the sweetest and the strongest of them all. How I wish you are my man," she said to me. "Talking about the sweetest, if I'm the sweetest, why did you run away from me in the kitchen in the middle of something?" I inquired, and she smiled so boldly and replied, "I was going to choke out of pleasure. I have never had such ferocity and the pleasure was draining me, so I have to run away before you end my life with pleasure." And I nodded my head, having understood why she ran away then. "Go and have your shower. Your dinner is ready. And never forget that you have a work to do tonight," she said to me as she touched my Monday hammer and left the room. I dragged my body up from the bed with so much effort, and I staggered to the bathroom door. I thought it was a joke, but I just learned that pleasure can drain a man's energy. I walked through the bathroom door and stood under the shower, scanning my eyes around the bathroom. I saw soap and sponges, but I will not be bathing with another person's sponge, so I have to bathe with only soap. I turned on the shower and it lands on my head like a waterfall, cold and refreshing. I stood and allowed the water fall on me for a couple of minutes, and it was like my lost strengths has started finding their ways back to me. And I picked up the bar of soap and rubbed it on my head as I stepped aside from the shower, and from my head, I scrubbed my entire body and returned to the shower and washed off the foam. And I stood as the water was falling on me. And the more it falls, the more I regains my energy. When I was done taking my bath, I stood for some time for my body to dry because I don't know how to share towel with people. I see towels as personal properties that must not be shared. And when my body dried a bit, I stepped out of the bathroom and wore my boxers and went to the parlor. I met them girls radiant and glowing with beauty because I have given them hot like they have never received before. I made them satisfied, but little did they know that I was draining slowly, stressing myself so much to satisfy the two of them at once. I think my pap quantity went down so much and it's affecting my physical strength. I poured my white thick pap like 7 times, trying to get them satisfied in the 2 sessions of the pleasure marathon we had. "Hi girls," I greeted as I sat in their middle, and Annabelle went to the kitchen and brought me swallow and some fruits. I looked at the food and the fruits and was convinced that these 2 daughters of Eve were well prepared for me, and I descended on the food and the fruits within a short period of time. They have all disappeared from my presence, and I drank some water, and that's when I began to feel real restoration of my strength. But deep down, I wasn't feeling my body like I used to. I was observing that something has left my body. Annabelle came and carried the plate away, as Shantel was so engrossed in the program that she was watching on the television. And Annabelle came and sat beside me, petting me. like a baby as she abandoned the TV program they were watching. She told me to put my head on her lap and I did, and she began to burst my pimples. When Shantel turned and saw what was happening, "Please don't snatch my guy from me. I only shared him with you just for the weekend," she said to her jokingly. "Trust me, nah, if you can't take good care of him, I swear I will collect him from you," she replied her, and they laughed. And Shantel drew closer to us. "You want to press his pimples, right? It's okay. Continue with it. But I am going straight to his Monday hammer and those garden eggs," she said as she slid her hand inside my boxers and grabbed my Monday hammer, and she began to play with it. I have known her for that. Once it's me and her together, next thing she will do is to grab my big Monday hammer. She likes to play with it, and that's why she holds it even when she is sleeping. Several times, I have tried to remove her hand, but when I found out that it's more of a battle than friendly things for her to keep her hands off my Monday hammer, I have to let her win for the peace to reign. My Monday hammer must have known her because she never allows it to rest any time we are together, always pressing it. She falls asleep holding it, and if I remove her hand from it, when she wakes up she will go back and hold it. She said that it helps her to sleep, that playing with it helps her fight stress. I have tried to make her stop that, but she wouldn't, so let her be. And I said to myself, she can only hold it and play with it, but she cannot detach it from my body and playing with it inside my boxers wasn't giving her much satisfaction, and she decided to pull off my boxers and began to suck my big Monday hammer, and that's not what I needed. I wanted to just rest, and before I knew what was going on, my Monday hammer began to get bigger and bigger, and she sat on it and began to go up and down as Annabelle lifted her nightgown up and put one of her orange in my mouth. What did I even know? I began to suck the heavy popple like newborn baby, and from there I gave them the third one, and that's when Annabelle told her friend Shantel that she will always share me with her, and Shantel only looked at her and smiled. I looked around and found out that both Shantel and Annabelle were sleeping. All of us ate ourselves to nonsense and fell asleep right in the sitting room. These girls ate me like I was going to end tomorrow, and I didn't believe that I will be able to do the third season of eating my girl and her friend. My strength was gone and my stomach was mumbling, and I was desperately hungry, and those that put me in the vegetables way were sleeping so comfortably. And as I could not hold the hunger any longer, and I checked the time and it was 1:30 a.m. at night, I went to the kitchen to see if I could get what to eat. I saw golden morn and cornflake, and I mixed them together and added some milk and sugar and was eating it fast like I escaped from the prison, and I heard my name, and it was Shantel calling, and I answered her from the kitchen. She came to the kitchen only to find me eating their food without authorization. "I was looking for you everywhere and you are here eating," she said to me. "I woke up hungry and found you guys sleeping, and I have to go and look for what to eat." I said to her, "It's okay. When you are done eating, meet me in the room, okay?" She said to me, and I nodded in agreement, and I watched her leave for her room. Meeting these two daughters of Eve taught me the biggest lesson of my life. And the lesson is that no matter how strong you think you are in bed, as a man, never bet your strength on women, because they will be the one to drain your energy to zero. So men mustn't drain themselves to satisfy women. And I concentrated on the food that I was eating, and when I was done, I washed the plate and went inside the room to sleep. Very early in the morning, I woke up and dressed up, and Shantel was the second to wake. She came to the parlor and met me, and I was waiting for the day to break properly so that I will make my way home before they finish me with free snail. "Ah, you are up already?" she said to me. "I'm not only up, I'm waiting for the sun to come up so that we'll go to my house." I said to her, "No, nah, please don't go. My mom will be coming back in the evening. You can go in the afternoon. Please, let's have some fun," she said, and I took a look at her. She was almost crying, and I hate to see tears in her eyes. I stood up and consoled her, and she was calm. But as the sun came up, I told her that I want to buy toothbrush. Immediately I found myself outside. I escaped to my house, and when she didn't see me again, she began to call me and I told her that I have gone home, and she asked me if they should come over to my house and I told them that I will be traveling to the village. I got home and went straight to my bed and fell like a log of wood and slept off. I slept till PM in the afternoon and it was hunger that woke me up. And I went to the kitchen and cooked some noodles to hold body and soul together. And I lay on the bed again, but this time I was not sleeping. I was meditating about everything that happened at Shantel's house. And I thanked God that I escaped alive. I imagined how silly it will be that a woman's pot of stew finished a fine boy like me. And as I was meditating, sleep stole me away and I woke up at the beep of my phone and I opened it. It was my Monday hammer that was sent to me from a strange number and I checked the background of the location and it was Shantel's room, and I wondered whom among the two of them that took the picture of me naked when I was sleeping. To be continued.